Hey, it's Melissa. I'm the writer and publisher at Wanging Dude Publishing. Thank you so much for being part of the channel. I share my experience, my experiment of writing my own book. I am publishing a memoir in spring of 2025, and I'm publishing it myself. And I'm going through all the process that publishing houses, bigger publishing houses, do for authors. But if you publish yourself, you got to do it for yourself. And one of them is the editing process. And I highly recommend that you have someone edit your own work, even if you know you're an excellent writer and you red line other people's stuff and you know your punctuation, and you got to have somebody else take a look. Because when you write a long form anything, if you're writing a long form book, like your eyes cross, you've looked at this thing so many times that you need somebody, a fresh set of eyes to come in and look at it. And that's what my editor has done. So she has sent back the manuscript. I have started going through it. At this point, I'm about halfway through her edits, and she's done a wonderful job of kind of smoothing out the sentences, and she's also, like, I had some paragraphs that were longer, others shorter, and she's actually kind of moved things around as well to kind of keep the chapter length consistent. And that's why I hired her to do. I didn't need somebody to look at the punctuation. I needed somebody to look at all that. So halfway through, and last night was the first time that I took out an entire section of the book. I'd said in a previous video to vomit on the page, to do it story by story. There's some books that I recommended in other videos, one being Bird by Bird, where it's just you take it a step at a time. And for me, it was just telling story after story after story and just getting it on the page. Just get it on the page. Don't worry about format. Just get it on the page. And so the editor is helping me with that, making sure that the stories, the chapters and the stories and everything fits together. She's been very good about things that I may not think about, where, let's say in chapter 10, I mentioned something, I come back around to it in chapter 13, but I didn't connect the dots as well as I should have, right? I know my story, but the reader doesn't know my story. So instead of just assuming that the reader can jump back on that bandwagon, she helps me. Hey, well, why don't you mentioned this earlier, so you probably need to put a little more detail in there and keep going. And it's just invaluable information that she's giving me. So, but there was one section where she said, I understand. It's an interesting story, but it just doesn't fit anywhere. I can't kind of put this puzzle piece anywhere that really makes it streamlined. And she said, I highly recommend you just ditch it. And so you would think that would be hard to hear, but at this point, I am just, like I said, so grateful for the feedback. And the book is going to be of the length that I would like it to be. I've been worried that it's not going to be long enough or not thick enough for my personal taste to look like a book, a chunky book, not too chunky, but chunky enough. And so I was comfortable enough to say, okay, if it's not needed, then I deleted it, highlight, delete. And I give you the story. So, if you are new to the channel, don't know who Melissa Carter is, that is totally fine. I appreciate you being here and sharing this journey with me. But I worked for several decades in the Atlanta area, being a morning show personality in radio. Appeared on television a few times, but my consistent job was in radio. And as a freelancer now, I still work consulting other people in radio, in podcasting. But I was the star of the show there for a little while. And in doing so, I was able to meet a lot of celebrities. So the book is mainly about my health journey. But I do sprinkle in stories about celebrities. And this one particular section or piece was about a celebrity named Miss Cleo. If you're not familiar with Miss Cleo, you're not old enough to remember her. Call me now. I can't do a Jamaican accent, but we thought Jamaican, ends up she wasn't Jamaican, but she was on the psychic lines that were very popular back in the 90s. And this was the early 2000s. And she had her company, or I don't know how it worked out, because I was not a part of all the planning that went on with the show behind the scenes. But somehow our show got connected with her show, and we were to film an infomercial with her. So we were a brand new morning show, and we decided that it would be good publicity for us. And we went back and forth about our reputation with someone that people may believe in, may not believe in. Is psychic, psychic readings, are they real or are they not? But she was such a big personality. And we were like, it's a Saturday where we go into a studio that's been fitted for television lights, and we just record one day with our listeners and spit out an infomercial. So we decided to do it. It was a lot of fun. It was an interesting experience for me to see not only Miss Cleo herself, who again was just this big ray of sunshine, like she just lit up the room, but also to see a television infomercial being filmed. And so we took listener questions, and so this is what I describe in the section. But the reason that I was going to include it was because at the end of the session, I had not shared at that point a certain illness, potentially fatal illness, with the radio listeners. I had not shared it with very many people except people within the station, but not everybody. And so it was not common knowledge that I was sick. And maybe somebody could have said something to her, and I said that in the chapter. It's not actually a whole chapter, but it was a section of a chapter, and but I said regardless, because I don't think anybody said anything to her. But again, that's the debate on whether she really had powers or not. But at the end of our session, as we were on the air, we had turned off the mics, they were turning off the cameras, and she looked at me because we were across from each other in the room, and she rubbed her hand around her abdomen and pointed at me. And she said, I sense something is going on there and you need to go to a doctor about it. And that was all she said. And so at the end of our recording, as we were saying bye and I hugged her, I said, well, as a matter of fact, I am currently in kidney failure. But I'm being taken care of for it. So that was just something that I thought, wow, it was just an interesting story. And it was fun to reflect back on Miss Cleo, who is no longer with us on this earth. But for those in the know, I mean, she was a very popular character. However, with the other stories of celebrities that fit into the flow of other conversations I was having about what was going on, and it just kind of didn't fit. It just was a story, but it wasn't, there wasn't again, a streamline. I don't want to repeat words, but it wasn't easy to follow. And so I cut it out. I cut Miss Cleo out. She's not going to be in my book. But that's an example of, I sat and reflected and wrote that piece and rewrote that piece and polished that piece and, sent it to the editor, and the editor's like, congratulations, but we can't use it. And so it's one of those things that you have to, when you are writing a book, I think, and I've said this before, that it's for the reader. It's for you. Yes, it's your baby, but it's also for the reader. The whole point of communication is conveying a message that somebody else will understand. And even though that may be a fun story, if it's something that's going to take you out of the feel of the book, then why put it in there? And then again, for some people, it may take them out because they're like, I can't believe that you actually believe that she actually thought, of course somebody said something to her, like, you got duped by somebody. So regardless of the reaction of that piece of the book, it's not in there and it was taken out. So you have to also have the flexibility to understand that you need to hire an editor because they need to give you a second pair of eyes. And you also need to let that editor tell you what is wrong with the book without you being offended. I don't feel that way. I didn't go into my relationship with the editor that way, but I know that had I been younger, I might have had my feelings hurt. I know when I started writing a column back in the day, my girlfriend at the time was someone who was in journalism. And so I would have her help me edit those columns to make sure that I was, getting it right, because I had done news stories and not full columns. So, as my career has gone on, I've tried to lengthen and lengthen and lengthen the amount that I write. And so I remember with her, and maybe because she's my girlfriend, but also I was just young and new and insecure and wanting to be perfect. It's got to be perfect. And, there was one article, she's like, okay, go back. You got to go back to the table, go back to the table. And I just remember being so frustrated, like a kid, I'm about to lose my mind going back to the table. But sometimes you do. Sometimes you do have to go back to the table because it may not be something that's going to communicate to the reader. And that's what you got to do. So there's an example of what I had to do last night, and get rid of that story. And I'm going through the next part of the book. And there's a part of the book where I share about my mother and my the end of my mother's life. And so I haven't got to that part yet. So that's one of the things I've told myself, okay, whatever the editor says about that part, you've got to take it. Like you can't be so attached that you can't get feedback. So hopefully this is helpful for anyone who is interested in writing. And even if you're not interested in writing your own stuff, maybe understanding the process that writers go through in order to get these books out. I tell you, the one thing that just hurts my feelings the most is when I go to a Target or a Walmart. I mean, they're not sponsors. I just mentioned them, but whichever one I'm in, and I see the discount bins and I see these books for $1.50 or whatever, and I'm thinking, that somebody spent so much time on doing that, and and I hate for it to be in the discount bin. Now, maybe someday I'll be in the discount bin. And you know what? It's still a privilege to have been on the shelf before making it to the discount bin. So even if I'm 50 cents in a Walmart bin, that's better than not having written the book at all. So that's how I look at it. So if you want to support the channel, there's plenty of options down below. It all goes to the publishing of the book because it's all the cost is on me. And also you can subscribe and see when the next video is available. And please, please give your feedback. I would love for questions. If I can't answer them, I'll find the answer for them. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.